Chapter 4. Meet the Mask. The words felt heavy and hollow, like he was dropping a stone into a still pond waiting for the ripple. He opened his eyes, meeting her gaze through the thin sliver of space the cracked door provided. She blinked, surprise flickering for the briefest, almost imperceptible moment before the mask slid back into place. Harder, colder than before. Her perfect composure returned. "You're serious?" Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion, a dangerous calm. He nodded, meeting her cold stare unflinchingly, the tremor in his voice replaced by a steel he didn't know he possessed. "I am." She stepped closer, but not with tenderness, more like a predator circling its prey, her designer heels clicking softly on the polished floor. Her scent, usually cloying, now felt predatory. "You think you can just walk away?" she hissed, her voice dropping to a low, venomous whisper. "After everything I've done for you? You think you can afford to piss me off? You're the golden boy now, but how fast do you think that falls apart if I start talking? To the school, to the press, to immigration?" His throat tightened, a bitter taste rising. "You don't mean that, Lakin. We both know what this was." Her laugh was hollow, brittle, and utterly devoid of mirth. "Don't I? You think I'm in love with you, River? Please. I married you for one reason, to stay in this country. And now you're suddenly too tired to play your part, too busy wallowing in your self-pity and your little music hobby." Her words cut deep, hitting every insecurity he harbored. He felt a cold wave wash over him, a chilling confirmation of his deepest fears. She wasn't hurt. She was calculating, ruthless, her ambition a cold, hard diamond. "Don't forget," she said, her voice dropping to an even lower, more dangerous whisper, her eyes glittering with malice. "I'm the one with the power here. You want out, River? You'll have to pay. Dearly." He shook his head, swallowing the lump in his throat, the bitter taste of her betrayal filling his mouth. "This isn't about money, Lakin. It's about being able to breathe. I just can't live this lie anymore." Her eyes glittered, sharp and dangerous, like a shark's. "Fine," she said slowly, each syllable laced with venomous promise. "But I won't make it easy for you. You think you're free? You're just starting to see who I really am, River, and what I can do." She turned on her heel, her movements sharp and decisive, and slammed the door behind her with a resounding thud that echoed through the silent apartment. River sat in the profound quiet, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs, a mixture of fear and an unexpected, exhilarating sense of relief. He knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The clock on the kitchen wall in his sprawling, impersonal California apartment blinked 9:47 p.m. Lakin was already asleep, or pretending to be, a still, rigid form under the covers on her own king-size bed. The silence of the apartment, usually a heavy blanket of dread, felt different tonight. A thin, almost imperceptible tremor of anticipation vibrated beneath it. River grabbed his car keys and a small, worn leather duffel bag from beside the door. No note, no explanation needed. Their arrangement, this cold transactional marriage, required only silence and the occasional performative appearance. He slid into his car, the cool leather of the seats a welcome sensation. The drive through the glittering sprawl of Los Angeles was a nightly ritual, a descent into the only world where he felt truly alive. The city lights blurred into streaks of color, a vibrant counterpoint to the muted tones of his home life. He maneuvered through the familiar streets, his mind already shifting gears, shedding the weight of Lakin, of medical school, of the crushing expectations. He pulled into the alley behind Charlie's, a nondescript bar tucked away on a quieter side street. The air here was thick with the scent of stale beer and something sweet, familiar in a comforting way, a stark contrast to the antiseptic smells of the hospital. He killed the engine, and the sudden quiet was filled with the low thrum of a bass line from inside, a distant muffled vibration that resonated deep in his chest. Charlie, the bar's gruff but kind owner, met him at the back door, a knowing look in his eyes. "Ready for another sermon, kid?" he asked, a faint smile touching his lips. River managed a genuine smile in return, something rare in his daily life. "Born ready, Charlie." He disappeared into the small, cramped dressing room backstage, a space barely big enough for a chair and a rickety table. This was his sanctuary, his transformation chamber. He pulled out the black, almost featureless mask from his duffel bag, a simple, smooth velvet that covered his entire face, save for the eyes. It wasn't a disguise, it was a release. He ran a thumb over its soft surface, the texture a reminder of the freedom it afforded him. "All right, that's my cue," Charlie's voice boomed from the other side of the door. Good luck, kid. River took a deep breath, the air tasting faintly of dust and old wood. He pulled the mask on, its velvet warmth settling over his face. The world narrowed, focusing everything into his vision, his hearing, his voice. The transformation was instant, profound. The weight of being River, the aspiring doctor, the unhappily married man, the haunted survivor of a devastating past simply evaporated. He was no longer River. He was the voice, the music, the escape. He stepped onto the small, dimly lit stage, the low hum of conversation from the crowd receding into a distant buzz. The stage lights, though modest, felt like a spotlight on his soul, not his face. He gripped the microphone, its cool metal a familiar comfort against his masked hand. His fingers, scarred from the wreck but now nimble and precise, found the fretboard of his acoustic guitar. He strummed a few chords, rich and resonant, letting the sound vibrate through his body. He began to sing, his voice a low, gravelly murmur at first, then building, soaring, filling the smoky room. It was a bluesy, soulful ballad he'd written in the dead of night, lyrics born from the quiet desperation of his days. He sang of longing, of hidden sorrows, of the suffocating feeling of being trapped in a life that wasn't his. He sang of the quiet rebellion of the soul, of the desperate search for something real amidst the pretense. The patrons, initially chatty, slowly fell silent, their conversations fading into a respectful hush. Heads turned, eyes fixed on the faceless figure on stage. This was magic. Here he wasn't Dr. River Hayes, the medical student burdened by expectations and a marriage of convenience. He wasn't the traumatized boy haunted by his biological parents, or the specter of his adoptive parents' mortality. He was just the music, and in this space he was truly free. He could mask his accent too, shifting from the slight, lingering hint of his European upbringing to a more neutral, almost American sound, a chameleon of cadence. It added another layer to his anonymity, another brick in the wall between his stage persona and the mundane misery of his daily life. He wasn't just performing, he was disappearing. This next one, he said, his voice deep and resonant, a practiced calmness in his tone, is for anyone who feels like they're living someone else's life. A ripple of understanding went through the crowd, a collective sigh. He launched into a new song, a raw, aching melody he'd written in the throes of a particularly lonely night when Lakin's friend, Ireland, had made a particularly cutting remark about his unprofessional hobbies. He poured all his frustration, all his suppressed anger and regret into the lyrics. The song was a visceral cry for freedom, a plea for authenticity. He didn't even care most nights that he had to be at the hospital for rounds at 7 a.m. The adrenaline from the performance, the pure, unadulterated release he felt on stage, was enough to carry him through. Sleep was secondary to this, to the fleeting moments of genuine connection he felt with an audience who knew only his voice, not his face, not his story. When the set ended, the applause was thunderous, a roar of appreciation that filled him with a warmth he rarely felt anywhere else. He bowed, a simple, elegant gesture, and slipped off the stage, retreating into the shadowed wings. He always left before the lights came up fully, before anyone could try to peek behind the velvet mask. He cherished his privacy, this sacred separation between his art and his aching reality. Back in the tiny dressing room, he pulled off the mask, the cool air hitting his face like a shock. The shift was immediate, a subtle weight settling back onto his shoulders. He was River again. He ran a hand through his damp hair, his breathing still a little ragged from the exertion. He could still hear the buzz of the crowd, the lingering energy of the performance. He quickly showered in Charlie's small, utilitarian bathroom attached directly to the back of the bar. The water was hot, scalding his skin, a cleansing ritual. He scrubbed away the sweat, the lingering scent of smoke, and, he hoped, the residue of the day's misery. He emerged minutes later, feeling cleaner, lighter, a temporary reprieve from the constant internal battle. Sometimes late at night, when the music still hummed in his veins and the adrenaline hadn't quite faded, he'd think of Kate. He'd remember her laughing, her eyes sparkling, the way she had seen him without any masks. He wondered if she'd ever heard his music, these songs he poured his soul into, the lyrics a thinly veiled diary of his pain and longing. He wondered if, somehow, she would recognize his voice, even without a face to put to it. The thought was a dangerous comfort, a secret hope he clung to, even as he knew it was a cruel, impossible fantasy. He zipped up his duffel bag, his heart still thrumming with a quiet satisfaction that defied the early morning call time. He'd deal with Lakin, with the hospital, with his own internal demons. Tomorrow. Tonight, he sang. Tonight, he was free. And that was enough. The glow of River's laptop bathed his face in cool blue light, casting sharp shadows beneath the hollows of his eyes. He sat motionless, save for his thumb hovering over the mouse pad, poised above the post button. One click, and it would be live. His first music video. It wasn't just a song anymore. It was a visual confession dressed in abstraction and silhouette, a shadow play that with painstaking precision revealed nothing of the man behind the voice, only the ache in his art. He reread the caption for the 10th time. New visualizer drops Friday. Hashtag the Velvet Mask, hashtag new music, hashtag behind the voice. Clean, controlled, impersonal. Yet somehow it felt like lighting a fuse inside the fortress he'd built to survive. This had always been his secret: the music, the stage, the mask. It started as an outlet, an escape hatch from a life of rigid expectations and emotional exile. But now the numbers are increasing: views, comments, messages from strangers who felt seen by songs he never meant for the world. The internet wanted intimacy, a face, a name, and River couldn't give them either, not without risking everything. The irony wasn't lost on him. A global pandemic had normalized masks, making them ubiquitous, necessary. But his had always been different: an armor for the soul, not the body. He remembered the first time someone at the grocery store paused, staring just a little too long. "Do I know you?" they'd ask, their brows furrowed, the subtext unmistakable. Not as River Hayes, like him, the velvet mask, the voice behind the ache. He had perfected the dodge, ball cap low, mask tight, hoodie up. But lately it wasn't enough. Paranoia bloomed in quiet moments. He flinched at compliments, hid from cameras, avoided mirrors. Still, he kept singing because on stage, hidden, faceless, he was more real than he ever could be at home. Lakin didn't know, or didn't care. His cousin James might suspect, but he never asked. Ireland only knew River Hayes through Lakin's curated social world. She'd never connected him to the music, to the confessions carved into melody. He liked it that way. The mask let him bleed without consequence. He could cry out for Kate, scream his loathing for the cage of his marriage, whisper about the wreck and what it had stolen from him, and no one would know the voice belonged to a man failing at being everything he was supposed to be. But tonight was different. This was exposure. Even wrapped in silhouette and metaphor, the act of sharing it, a video, felt like stripping down in public. He imagined unraveling, a patient recognizing his voice, a hospital administrator with a kid who followed the account, Lakin, using it as leverage in divorce court, his adoptive father, disappointed beyond words. The pressure of hiding was becoming unbearable, but revealing the truth would cost him the only thing that made the hiding worthwhile. He inhaled, deep and slow, then let it out through clenched teeth. The cursor blinked, waiting, and then, without ceremony, he clicked. The screen refreshed. The post went live. It was done. Maybe a new beginning, maybe the end of everything. The fluorescent lights of the hospital hallway buzzed faintly, casting a sterile, relentless glow over River's drawn features. It was 3 p.m., the infamous mid-afternoon lull when exhaustion hit hardest. He moved from patient to patient, chart to chart, on autopilot. The weight of his white coat felt heavier today, the stethoscope around his neck a reminder of a life that never quite felt like his own. Residency was a grind, long shifts, broken sleep, and the suffocating burden of responsibility. He subsisted on lukewarm coffee and sheer willpower, and lately, on the euphoric afterglow of his secret life as the Velvet Mask. Hospitals and music venues couldn't be more different. One cold and fluorescent, the other cloaked in shadows and raw emotion. One demanded restraint, the other let him bleed. He stood at the nursing station, half focused on updating a patient's chart on his tablet, when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Los Angeles area code. He usually ignored these, especially mid-shift, but something made him answer. "Dr. Hayes," came a voice, smooth, confident, with the faintest trace of a British accent. River stepped away from the desk, lowering his voice. "This is River Hayes. How can I help you?" "My name is Elias Vance. I manage several high-profile recording artists. One of my clients, Marcus Thorne, is a massive admirer of your work, as the Velvet Mask." River's blood ran cold. He blinked, heart hammering. He'd been meticulous. There were no public links between River Hayes and the Velvet Mask persona. No name, no face, no location. "Mr. Vance," he said carefully, his voice tighter now, brain already spiraling through possibilities. "I'm surprised." Vance gave a low, amused chuckle. "I imagine so. But Marcus is rarely moved by anything, and he's listened to your entire catalog, twice, I believe. Your latest track, Lost in the Crowd, hit him hard. The vulnerability, the artistry. He's very interested in working with you. We're talking endorsement, tour opportunities, full marketing support. A global platform. River leaned against the wall as if the words had weight. Endorsement, tour. Global. The hospital sounds dulled. Beeping machines, shuffling footsteps, all fading into the background hum of panic in his ears. This was everything he'd secretly hoped for, and everything he feared. The walls between his worlds were not built to withstand such pressure. If his two lives collided, it wouldn't be quiet. It would be catastrophic. Lakin would weaponize it. The hospital board wouldn't be pleased. His parents, especially his adoptive father, might see it as a betrayal of the stable life they fought to give him. The internet would demand a face, a story, truth he wasn't ready to tell. Mr. Hayes? Vance's voice cut again, polite but firm. Still with me? River swallowed hard. His mouth was dry. The mask wasn't on his face, but it might as well have been. Its weight pressed invisibly on him, a reminder of everything it protected. I'm here, River replied, somehow steady. It's a lot to process. I need time to think. Of course, Vance said, but don't think too long. Opportunity doesn't wait. The call ended. River stared at his phone, 1,000 thoughts ricocheting through his head. This was the moment, the line in the sand. Did he keep hiding in his safe, silent prison, or finally step into the brilliance he craved, even if it meant being seen? It had been 2 long, agonizing days since the call from Elias Vance, 2 days that stretched into an eternity of internal debate. River had not yet entered Elias's office. He was holed up in his apartment, the silence around him amplifying the chaotic roar in his mind. The offer from Marcus Thorne, whispered through a phone line, had detonated like a silent bomb in the meticulously constructed, precarious architecture of his double life. For 48 hours, the world outside his Los Angeles apartment had ceased to exist. He'd skipped hospital rounds, inventing a vague excuse of a sudden severe migraine that no one dared question. Lakin, to his relief, hadn't pushed, either sensing the impenetrable wall he'd erected, or too distracted by her own social life. Even Ireland's usual unwanted presence had been mercifully absent. River had spent those days pacing the worn Persian rug in his living room, the cool California evening air filtering through the cracked window. Comforting and familiar from his earliest childhood before his family had moved to Berlin, his thoughts spiraled in relentless, unforgiving circles. The offer, an endorsement deal, a tour slot, a global marketing campaign, was everything he had dreamed about for his music. He could practically hear his lyrics reverberating in concert halls, echoing back from thousands of voices, reaching people who needed to know they weren't alone. But at what cost? The fear of exposure was a cold, constant knot in his stomach. He could see the headlines: faceless pop star revealed to be medical student married for visa. The scandal would end his tenuous standing at the hospital, undo the dream his adoptive father had clung to for him, and hand Lakin leverage in a divorce that already felt like a looming war. Worse, the thought of his biological family, especially Regan, seizing upon his fame for their own gain made his skin crawl. And then there was Kate. She was the raw reason behind his music, the soul threaded through every lyric. How could he pursue this opportunity knowing it would bring questions, speculation, and scrutiny? Knowing that his most private pains, his self-blame, his past addiction, the abuse he survived, and the enduring ache for Kate, could all be laid bare if his identity slipped? The velvet mask wasn't just a costume, it was armor. He toggled back and forth, mind a war zone. One moment he was sure he had to accept. The next he was convinced the only safe move was silence, pulling his music offline, erasing the trail before it caught fire. But the thought of silencing the velvet mask felt like a betrayal of self, like extinguishing the only voice he had left. When the 2 days finally ended, his decision came like steel, cold, sharp, unyielding. He would accept, but only on his terms. He would protect his anonymity at all costs. It was a desperate gamble, but for the first time in years, River felt agency. Now, seated across from Elias Vance's polished mahogany desk, the air in the expansive office seemed heavier than anything he had ever felt in a hospital ward. This was another type of operating table. The stakes weren't measured in blood pressure or heartbeats, but in exposure and identity. Elias Vance leaned back in his chair, that faint, unreadable smile tugging at his lips. His reputation preceded him: ruthless, sharp, legendary. So, Mr. Hayes, Vance began, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. Marcus Thorne is incredibly enthusiastic. He sees something in the velvet mask that transcends the ordinary. This isn't just an endorsement, it's a legacy project. He wants to elevate your platform. River inhaled deeply, the scent of polished wood and expensive leather grounding him. He had rehearsed this moment in his mind 100 times. He thought of his adoptive father's pride, of Lakin's cold detachment of Kate. "Mr. Vance," he said, voice steady despite the tremor threatening his fingers. "I'm honored by Mr. Thorne's interest, truly. But there are non-negotiable conditions for the Velvet Mask's participation." He let the words linger. "My identity must remain anonymous. No unmasking, no photos, no interviews that reveal my face, no live appearances. My personal life stays completely separate from the art." Vance didn't flinch, but his eyes narrowed slightly. A challenging task in this day and age. Fans crave connection, transparency. They can connect to the voice, River said, stronger now. "My privacy isn't a luxury. It's fundamental. Anonymity makes the message shine. It protects the art and me." He didn't say, "It's the only way I can survive this." He didn't need to. Vance steepled his fingers. We can navigate appearances, projections, visualizers, digital avatars, but the press will be relentless. The curiosity will be immense. Speculation will be constant. Then we control the narrative," River replied. "Any public content, any representation of the Velvet Mask is filtered through a trusted team. No leaks, no slips. My real name never leaves this room." A long pause. River braced for pushback, but then Vance leaned back with a slow, approving nod. "Very well, Mr. Hayes. Your conviction is compelling. Marcus will appreciate the mystery. He's always admired authenticity, even when it hides behind shadows. We'll draft the contract accordingly, but understand, this secrecy will make you a target. They will hunt you." "Let them try," River said quietly. As he left Vance's office, the deal now real and binding, he felt both victorious and exposed. He had won his terms, but now the world would start watching, and he would need to protect the mask with everything he had. The heavy oak door of Elias Vance's office clicked shut behind River with a soft final thud, sound that echoed the absolute gravity of what he had just done. For a long moment he stood in the silent plush hallway, the scent of cigars and expensive wood varnish lingering around him, his chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths. He had done it. He had secured the deal. Marcus Thorne wanted the Velvet Mask, and he had agreed to River's terms. But Vance's warning followed him like a ghost. "They will hunt you." The world now knew the Velvet Mask was moving up, and people would come for him. Media, fans, internet sleuths. The mask, once a creative device, now became his most precious possession. One misstep and everything, his music, his medical career, his privacy, his fragile sanity, could unravel. He entered the elevator and watched his reflection in the mirrored walls. It was a fractured image, a man split down the middle. Doctor, husband, musician, fraud. He wasn't sure which version of himself he despised more. Back home, the apartment was dark and cold despite the California sun filtering through the blinds. Lakin wasn't there, or maybe she was and simply hadn't acknowledged him. The silence was familiar. It had weight. Their unspoken war raged on. Despite his clear demand for a divorce, she acted as if nothing had changed. Worse, she performed. Social events, dinners, Instagram posts, all carefully curated to show the perfect couple. He was her accessory, her success story, her visa, and Ireland, the ever-watchful, ever-judging third wheel, was always around now. River could never tell whether she was Lakin's accomplice, handler, or shadow. She slid passive-aggressive remarks into conversation like daggers hidden in silk. "You look tired, River. Up late working on that art of yours again? Or just avoiding your wife?" He buried himself in hospital shifts, charting until his fingers ached. His refuge was the studio. There in the shadows he was someone else, someone brave enough to say everything. Someone honest. The music world responded like wildfire. The Velvet Mask became a phenomenon. His tracks climbed global charts. Fans quoted his lyrics like scripture. The mystique became the message. But fame, even masked, came with attention. Speculation exploded. Reddit threads, reaction videos, Twitter conspiracies. They dissected every visual, every note. Who is the Velvet Mask became a cultural obsession. Every time someone looked at him too long in the hospital hallway, he felt his pulse spike. Every time a stranger said, "Don't I know you?" Panic clawed at his throat. Still, the mask stayed on. He refused to surrender his sanctuary.